Grim Memoirs.
Welcome, Grim viewers, to a thought-provoking and solemn journey through the hidden narratives behind seemingly ordinary photos. Today, we delve into the darker corners of history as we uncover 15 photographs that conceal poignant and often heart-wrenching backstories. This is a journey that calls for empathy and understanding as we explore the real-life stories that these photos capture. Let us remember and pay homage to the souls whose stories have been captured in these frames and bear witness to their memories. Number 15. Jeremy Bentham's auto icon. Jeremy Bentham was a philosopher, economist, jurist, and legal reformer, and the founder of modern utilitarianism, an ethical theory holding that actions are morally right if they tend to promote happiness or pleasure among all those affected by them. The image you're seeing right now, it's not of a life-size doll in his honor, or a wax figurine. It's actually the real body of Jeremy, taxidermized and put on display as a sort of auto icon per his last wishes. After Bentham's death, in accordance with his directions, his body was dissected in the presence of his friends. The skeleton was then reconstructed, supplied with a wax head to replace the original, which had been mummified, dressed in Bentham's own clothes and set upright in a glass-fronted case. Bentham had initially intended the auto icon to incorporate his actual head, mummified to resemble its appearance in life. Southwood Smith's experimental efforts at mummification, based on practices of the indigenous peoples of New Zealand and involving placing the head under an air pump over sulfuric acid and drawing off the fluids, although technically successful, left the head looking distastefully macabre, with dried and darkened skin stretched rigidly over the skull. The auto icon was therefore given a wax head, fitted with some of Bentham's own hair. The real head was displayed in the same case as the auto icon for many years, but became the target of repeated student pranks. It was later locked away. In 2020, the auto icon was put into a new glass display case and moved to the entrance of UCL's new Student Center on Gordon Square in London. Number 14. The portrait of Istvan Riner. This haunting photograph of 4-year-old Istvan, taken moments before he was killed in Auschwitz, is one of the most heartbreaking things you'll see in a while. From the harrowing striped uniform to the little boy's expression and his jarring smile, knowing the context and the events that ensued shortly after, this portrait may be one of the most unfortunate portraits ever to be captured on camera. Istvan was born in Miskolc, Hungary on July 6, 1940. In 1944, he was deported with his mother and grandmother from the Miskolc ghetto to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where he and his grandmother were selected for the gas chambers. He was only 4 years old when he was murdered. Istvan's older half-brother, Janos Kovacs, survived the Holocaust and later emigrated to the US, where he would eventually donate this picture to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Number 13. Victorian death photography. Victorian death photography, also known as postmortem photography, was a practice that gained popularity during the Victorian era, particularly in the 19th century. This intriguing and somewhat macabre tradition involved taking photographs of deceased individuals, often children or infants, as a way to commemorate and remember them. Postmortem photos were created for various reasons. They were a way to preserve the memory of the deceased and could serve as a form of memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning remember that you will die. The images often depicted the deceased looking as if they were peacefully sleeping, which was intended to provide solace to the grieving family. Despite its morbid nature, postmortem photography has garnered interest among collectors and historians in recent years. These images offer a glimpse into the past, revealing the customs and attitudes of a bygone era. Before we continue, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you're into more grim content that's on the way. Don't forget to nudge that notification bell so we can be more inspired to create content for like-minded gents such as yourselves. Number 12. The 1990 Mark Jackson NBA Hoops rookie card. This seemingly normal Mark Jackson trading card from 1990 is a unique and controversial piece of memorabilia related to the infamous Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric Menendez, who were convicted of the brutal murders of their wealthy parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989. The case attracted significant media attention and remains one of the most high-profile criminal trials in American history. Back in August of 1989, the brothers committed the hideous crime of murdering their parents at home without anyone knowing about it. The pair went on to claim a massive insurance payout that allowed them to live a luxurious lifestyle. Both Lyle and Eric spent that money to purchase expensive watches, clothes, and cars. Among the items they bought were tickets to a basketball game at Madison Square Garden, where they would eventually be captured on this NBA card. It's very unsettling to realize that they had already killed their parents at the time the photograph or the card was taken. They were not initially suspected by the authorities in the murder of their parents. However, their expensive spending habits following the killing were suspicious, so the police started to investigate their possible involvement. The brothers reportedly spent approximately $700,000 before they were eventually arrested in March 1990. Number 11. Lost photo of Omar Sanchez. The little girl in the photo is Amaya Sanchez Garza, a Colombian girl trapped and killed by a landslide when she was 13 years old. The landslide was caused by the 1985 eruption of the volcano Nevado del Ruiz in Armero, Tolima, in Colombia. Volcanic debris mixed with ice to form massive lahars, or volcanically induced mudflows, landslides, and debris flows rushed into the river valleys below the mountain, killing about 25,000 people and destroying Armero and 13 other villages. After the lahar demolished her home, Sanchez was trapped beneath the debris of her house, where she remained in water for 3 days, as rescue workers did not have any way to render life-saving medical care if they amputated her pinned legs. Her harrowing plight was documented by journalists in that chilling last photo as she swayed from calmness into agony while relief workers tried to comfort her. At times she was scared and prayed or cried. On the third night, Sanchez began hallucinating, saying that she did not want to be late for school and mentioned a math exam. At one point, she asked the people to leave her so they could rest. Hours later, the workers returned with a pump and tried to save her, but sadly to no avail. Omira suffered for nearly 3 nights, roughly 60 hours, before she died at approximately 10:05 a.m. on November 16 from exposure, most likely from gangrene or hypothermia. Number 10. Shadows of Hiroshima. Human Shadow Etched in Stone is an exhibition at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. It is thought to be the residue of a person who was sitting at the entrance of Hiroshima branch of Sumitomo Bank when the atomic bomb was dropped over the city. It is also known as Human Shadow of Death or simply the Blast Shadow. According to the museum, it is thought that the person had been sitting on the stone step waiting for the bank to open when the heat from the bomb burned the surrounding stone white and left the person's shadow. A black deposit was also found on the shadow. According to museum staff, many visitors to the museum believe that the shadow is the outline of a human vaporized immediately after the bombing. However, the possibility of human vaporization is not supported from a medical perspective. The ground surface temperature is thought to have ranged from 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius just after the bombing. Exposing a body to this level of radiant heat would leave bones and carbonized organs behind. While radiation could severely inflame and ulcerate the skin, complete vaporization of the body is impossible. Nevertheless, the shadow etched into the pavement stands as a chilling memory of a devastating moment in history and a reminder of the harm people can cause to one another. Number 9. The Doll Image. This seemingly harmless, albeit creepy, doll photo makes for a disturbing turn if there ever was one. What looks like an antique doll in the photo is actually a real mummified dead body that Russian historian, linguist, and philologist Anatoly Moskvin exhumed, stole, and eventually preserved into this grotesque figurine. Anatoly was arrested in 2011 when authorities discovered his gruesome practice and 29 dolls that he had made from the remains of girls aged from 3 to 25 years old. He mummified their remains, dressed them in clothing, and arranged them in his home. Moskvin admitted that he would stuff the decayed corpses with rags. Then he would wrap nylon tights around their faces or fashion doll faces onto them. He would also insert buttons or toy eyes into the girls' eye sockets so that they could watch cartoons with him. Moskvin added that he had done what he did because he was waiting for science to find a way to bring the dead back to life. In the meantime, he used a simple solution of salt and baking soda to preserve the girls. If you were thinking about his parents and the fact that they must have seen the corpse dolls in the house, they always maintained that they had thought they were normal dolls all along. Moskvin was charged with 12 crimes, all of which dealt with the desecration of graves. He confessed to 44 counts of abusing graves and dead bodies. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and sentenced to time in a psychiatric ward following his sentencing. Though, as of September 2018, he was faced with the opportunity to continue his treatment in his home, a decision that didn't bode well with the victims' families, to say the least. Number 8. James Bulger lost CCTV photo. On first glance, this CCTV capture of a little boy hand in hand with another boy in a shopping center hall looks totally normal and harmless even, but it truly hides a nefarious truth that shocked England to its core back in 1993. The victim, James Bulger, was a 2-year-old boy who was abducted and brutally murdered by two 10-year-old boys, John Venables and Robert Thompson. The case sent shockwaves through the United Kingdom and raised serious questions about the treatment and responsibility of juvenile offenders. On February 12, 1993, James Bulger was abducted from a shopping center in Bootle, Merseyside, England, while his mother briefly looked away. His abductors, John Venables and Robert Thompson, lured the toddler away from the shopping area, and this moment was actually caught on CCTV camera as seen in this image. The two boys, both aged 10 at the time, subjected James Bulger to a brutal and sustained attack, which included beating and torturing him. Then they left his lifeless body on train tracks, where it was discovered 2 days later. The police launched an extensive search for the missing toddler, and a closed-circuit television camera captured images of James with his abductors. This footage fortunately helped identify the perpetrators, who were arrested within days. Venables and Thompson were found guilty of James Bulger's abduction and murder. They became the youngest convicted murderers in modern British history. They were sentenced to custody until they reached adulthood, which meant they could be detained for a minimum of 8 years. Both Venables and Thompson were released on parole in 2001, and they were granted lifelong anonymity to protect their identities. This decision was met with controversy and concern for the safety of the public. Over the years, both individuals were rearrested and re-incarcerated for various offenses unrelated to the Bulger case, and their legal status and identity protection have been subjects of ongoing debate and legal action. The James Bulger case had a profound impact on United Kingdom, leading to discussions about the treatment and punishment of child offenders, as well as the broader issues surrounding crime and society. The tragedy continues to be remembered as a heart-wrenching example of the consequences of child-on-child violence and the complexities of juvenile justice. Number 7. The Delphi Girls. Many of you will recognize this lost photo of Libby capturing her best friend Abby and the bridge before they were abducted and murdered in 2017 in Carroll County. The Delphi Girls murder case, as it came to be known after, refers to the unsolved homicides of Abigail Williams and Liberty German in Delphi, Indiana in February 2017. On February 13, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German went hiking along the Delphi historic trails near the Monon High Bridge. When they didn't return at the expected time, their families reported them missing. The following day, their bodies were discovered in a wooded area near the trail. The case has been the subject of an extensive investigation by law enforcement, including the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, the Indiana State Police, and the FBI. Despite this, the person responsible for the murders has not been apprehended. One of the most notable aspects of the case is that Libby German managed to capture both audio and a photograph of a man believed to be the suspect on her smartphone. Law enforcement released this evidence to the public in hopes of identifying the individual. The audio recording features a male voice saying the words, "down the hill." The Delphi community has been deeply affected by the tragedy and has played an active role in keeping the case in the public eye. Numerous billboards, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns have been organized to help generate leads and support the investigation. Law enforcement authorities continue to actively investigate and pursue leads, and they have urged the public to come forward with any information that may help identify the suspect. The hope is that someone may recognize the individual in the audio and image evidence or have information that can contribute to solving this tragic case. Number 6. Tereska. The Tereska photo is an iconic image taken by the renowned Polish photographer David Seymour in 1948. The photograph captures the emotional aftermath of World War II and is a poignant representation of the psychological scars and trauma experienced by a generation of children who grew up during the war. It features a young girl named Tereska, whose exact age is unclear, but she is thought to have been around 7 or 8 years old at the time. Tereska was a student at the School for Children with Special Needs in Warsaw, Poland. She had experienced the horrors of war, including the destruction of her home and the loss of her family. In the image, Tereska is seen writing on a blackboard, an assignment from their teacher to draw their home, but her writing appears to be chaotic and illegible. Little Tereska is able to draw only frantic and jumbled lines, a window perhaps to her own troubled psyche and the terrors she lived through during the war. Her eyes faintly reflecting the anguish and the turmoil she might have been feeling. The photograph has often been interpreted as a visual representation of the mental and emotional trauma she endured during the war. The distorted writing on the blackboard is seen as a symbol of the disorientation, confusion, and suffering that many children experience during the conflict. The Tereska photo has become an iconic representation of the long-lasting impact of war on young minds. Number 5. The Omar Bombing. This normal-looking photo of a father and his son was taken moments before the Omar car bombing that happened on 15 August 1998 in the town of Omar in County Tyrone in Northern Ireland. The red Vauxhall Cavalier that is seen in the photo was actually the vehicle containing the bomb. The camera was found afterwards in the rubble. The man and the child in the photo both survived. Sadly, the same thing cannot be said for the photographer. Around 2:30 p.m. that day, a call was placed to Omar's police force warning them of a bomb. The police believed it was near the town's courthouse, a building at the opposite end of the main street from the market square, where the car was parked. Police rushed to clear the area, tragically directing people toward the market. Shortly after 3 p.m., the car bomb exploded, destroying 2 buildings nearby. The bombing killed 29 people and injured about 220 others, making it the deadliest and most damaging attack to have occurred during the 3 decades-long civil conflict known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. This terrorist attack was carried out by the members of the Real Irish Republican Army, a provisional Irish Republican Army splinter group who opposed the IRA's ceasefire and the Good Friday Agreement, signed earlier in the year. The attack came just months after the citizens of Northern Ireland voted in favor of the agreement, a document laying out the necessary steps to peace and the order in which they should be taken. Number 4. Photo of Issei Sagwa. The person captured in this somewhat gross photo is Issei Sagwa, a Japanese cannibal who was never jailed for his crime. In June 1981, While living in Paris, Sagwa lured a fellow Sorbonne student, Renée Hartevelt, a Dutch woman, to his apartment under the pretense of studying poetry. There, he shot her in the back and then proceeded to engage in acts of cannibalism, mutilation, and necrophilia. Sagwa's actions were discovered when he was seen by a neighbor attempting to dispose of the body parts in a nearby lake. He was subsequently arrested by French authorities. The case posed complex legal challenges for French authorities. Sagwa's psychological state was in question, and there was uncertainty about whether he was fit to stand trial. Eventually, he was deemed unfit due to his mental health issues, and he was placed in a psychiatric institution. In 1986, Japanese authorities agreed to extradite Sagwa to Japan, where he was to be hospitalized for his mental condition. However, due to legal and bureaucratic issues, he was released from a Japanese mental institution in 1986, much to the outrage of many people who considered him a danger to society. In Japan, Sagwa became a source of fascination for the public. He wrote books, made public appearances, and even became a minor celebrity, which added to the controversy surrounding his release. Sagwa's continued freedom after his release has been met with public outrage and debate regarding the handling of such cases. Sometimes people's fascination with the macabre knows no boundaries. Number 3. The Iroquois Theater Fire. This is an image of the infamous Iroquois Theater Fire, often referred to as the deadliest single-building fire in U.S. history, which occurred on December 30, 1903 in Chicago, Illinois. The tragedy claimed the lives of at least 602 people and injured several hundred more. The Iroquois Theater, located at 2428 West Randolph Street in Chicago, was a newly constructed and lavishly designed theater that had just opened on November 23, 1903. On December 30, a matinee performance of the musical comedy Mr. Bluebeard was taking place. The audience included a significant number of women and children, as it was during the holiday season. A fire broke out during the second act of the performance when a piece of decorative cloth on the stage caught fire from a malfunctioning stage light. The fire quickly spread to the theater's highly flammable decorations and curtains. Panic ensued among the audience as they attempted to escape. Many exits were locked or difficult to open, and there was a general lack of fire safety measures in place. Several people were trampled in the stampede to the exits. Firefighters and rescue personnel reportedly faced challenges due to the chaotic scene. The fire resulted in an enormous loss of life, as I've mentioned, although some estimates suggest the number could be higher due to unreported deaths. The Iroquois Theater Fire led to significant changes in fire safety regulations and building codes, not only in Chicago but across the US. The tragedy exposed serious deficiencies in theater safety and fire prevention standards. It also spurred investigations and legal action against those responsible for the theater's construction and operation. Number 2. Samantha Cunningham and the horrifying Ransom photo. Samantha Cunningham was an 18-year-old barista from Anchorage, Alaska, who tragically became the victim of a high-profile abduction and murder case in 2012. Her case gained national attention due to its disturbing details and the subsequent investigation that uncovered the actions of her killer, Israel Keys. Samantha Cunningham was abducted from the coffee stand where she worked on February 1, 2012. Israel Keys, a serial killer who had planned the crime carefully, approached her after the stand had closed for the night and forced her into his vehicle. After her abduction, Israel Keys sent a ransom demand to Samantha's boyfriend using her cell phone. The message included the chilling photo of Samantha tied up and holding a copy of the day's newspaper as, quote, proof of life. However, Keys had already killed Samantha before sending the ransom message. He reportedly sewed Samantha's eyelids open with fishing line, braided her hair, and applied makeup to her face. Then he propped her body against the wall, held out a current issue of the Alaska Daily News, and took a picture. This was the proof of life photo that he intended to use to prove she was unharmed. Samantha's disappearance triggered an extensive search effort by law enforcement, family, and the community. The ransom note and photo complicated the investigation, as they initially suggested that she might still be alive. In March 2012, Israel Keys was apprehended in Texas on unrelated charges. During interviews with law enforcement, he confessed to Samantha Cunningham's murder and provided details about the crime. He also confessed to several other murders he had committed across the United States. Keys led investigators to Samantha's dismembered remains, which he had concealed in Matanuska Lake in Alaska. Her body had been disposed of in several trash bags that were weighted down. Israel Keys was found dead in his jail cell in December 2012, an apparent suicide. He was never tried for Samantha Cunningham's murder or the other homicides he had admitted to, leaving many unanswered questions regarding his other victims and the extent of his crimes. Samantha Cunningham's abduction and murder deeply affected her family, friends, and the community. Her case highlighted the danger posed by individuals like Israel Keys, who operated as a serial killer without leaving a clear pattern for investigators. It also raised questions about the extent of his criminal activities and the challenges of solving such cases. The ransom photo in particular was a disturbing and deceptive element of the case that added to its complexity. Number 1. The last known photo of Regina K. Walters. This last photo of Regina K. Walters is truly a haunting one. Considering it was taken by her killer, one cannot imagine the fear and terror she must have felt during those last moments. The case of Regina K. Walters is a heart-wrenching example of the dangers of hitchhiking and accepting rides from strangers, particularly in isolated and potentially hazardous situations. In 1990, Regina K. Walters was hitchhiking with her boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones, in Texas. They accepted a ride from Robert Ben Rhodes, who was driving a truck. Rhodes, who was a serial killer known for preying on hitchhikers and young women, abducted both of them. Walters spent almost a month in a dungeon-like compartment accessible from between the front seats. Rhodes had fitted its ceiling with handcuffs, allowing him to abuse victims freely during stops along America's interstates. He had converted a section of his truck into a homemade torture chamber that became Regina Walters' personal hell for several weeks after watching him murder her lover. Authorities would later recover photographs from his home that depicted Regina Walters and other victims in stressed positions and visible horror. The images, showing differing hair lengths and various bruises on Walters, would reveal that she had been held captive for an extended period of time. She endured weeks of torture before Rhodes shaved her genitals and gave her a final haircut. Driving her to an abandoned barn, he took one of the most disturbing photos of all time, showing a defenseless Walters moments before her death. In 1990, Robert Ben Rhodes was arrested and charged with the murder of Regina K. Walters and Ricky Lee Jones, as well as other crimes. The photograph of Walters was found in his possession and played a crucial role in his arrest and conviction. Robert Ben Rhodes was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to life in prison. He is also suspected of being responsible for the murders of several other individuals during his years as a serial killer. As we come to an end of this unsettling journey through these seemingly ordinary images with dark backstories, we're reminded that appearances can be deceiving. Each of these photographs we've explored today is a window into a moment of the past, a glimpse into the unknown, and a testament to the complex, sometimes sinister, nature of our human experience. They're a stark reminder that the world is full of hidden stories, some of which are deeply unnerving. Until next time, remember to look beyond the surface, because reality is often far more fascinating and at times even more frightening than we can imagine. Thank you for watching.